The Acoustics 5020 Soundstage, Soundstage, Soundstage. Hi, and welcome. I'm Hunter Gray, and this is Hunter-Gray-LUV-Music. I started this channel because I want to help you reach your hi-fi happy place. Because, my opinion, music is awesome, and listening to my favorite music super important to me. Listening to my music just grounds my daily life. And that means I want my music to sound beautiful when I play it. So that's why we are here talking about hi-fi gear. Because your hi-fi gear and my hi-fi gear helps or hurts how the music we love sounds. So slow down for a few minutes and enjoy while we have a chat about the Acoustics 5020 stand mount speakers. And you see, we're going to do some comparisons here. Let's take a look at the specs for the 5020. This is $899 a pair, $900 basically. It's a two-way stand mount, 1-inch silk. Well, no, it's a 1-inch tweeter. It's not silk dome. A 5-inch mid bass driver. They are 6 ohms and they have a stated sensitivity rating of 89 dB. These are the most sensitive of these speakers. So if you're not recognizing, this is the Elac Debut 3.0 that just recently came out. There, for size reference, the Acoustics 5020 also on a stand, and my reference KEF LS50 Meta. So of these three, the Acoustics is the most efficient and easiest to drive. The Meta are the hardest. I had to drop the volume 10 clicks to volume match between the 5020s and the Meta. And with the Elac, I only had a 3-click difference to volume match between the Elac Debut 3.0 and the Acoustics 5020. These have a stated frequency response range from 53 hertz to 30,000 hertz. But I hope you are starting to recognize that whether it's hi-fi gear or cars or whatever it is, manufacturer specs need to be taken with a significant portion of salt, because some hype their specs and some understate them. BMW, for instance, is famous for understating their horsepower and their torque. Typically, after break-in, you put a BMW on a dyno, and you're going to be putting more power down to the ground than their stated specs. Like this, I was able to clearly hear a 45 hertz test tone, and I could hear the rolled off 40 hertz test tone when their specs say it only reaches down to 53. So in my opinion, I still really prefer the 5020s with the subwoofer. The Elac they reach deeper down, and I am perfectly happy for my music library running the Elac Debut 3.0s without a subwoofer. I really prefer the 5020s with a subwoofer, even though I think they reach down to 45 hertz when they only claim 53 hertz. So let's see. The crossover frequency between these is 2500 hertz, which is higher than the Elac's 2000 hertz. They weigh in at 15.4 pounds, and you can see the size. The Elac is larger than both the Acoustics and the KEF LS50 Meta, but you can just see those anyway. I have these in the satin white finish, and I think they look sharp. And I actually am not a grill person, but you see, I've got the magnetic grill on. I was playing them all the time with the magnetic grill on, and I actually think they look really stylish and sharp with the grills on. But your mileage may vary, but I think these are attractive and stylish and will fit many home decors in either the black satin or the white satin that I chose and I prefer. The build quality feels excellent, and when knocking on them, they seem very inert. Now, as I said, I'm a fan of Crutchfield, and they give you a 60-day in-home trial period, which I highly value. So, I strongly recommend listen for yourself in your own space with your own music. The speaker setup on these, super simple. The first setup I tried, blown away by the Soundstage. And it really, no matter what I did, the Soundstage that these stand mount speakers throw is so wide. They throw a Soundstage really wide, much wider than where they are positioned. And they orally disappear just effortlessly. I started them listening in my living room in my normal position where I point them to the top of the listening triangle. And that was great. I played around with some other adjustments, but I settled back where I started in that, just pointing them to the point of the triangle, which is my listening position, which for most speakers in my living room is my favorite positioning for speakers. In the living room, I had them 7 inches from the wall, and I had them 8 feet wide apart. Here in the dining room, I had them, well, just so you know, they were 7 feet wide apart, but that back window is 4 feet behind. So these stand mounts, the 26 inches, have that rear port is above that half wall. So it's really 4.5 feet back to that 6 foot window. And it is 4.5 feet to each side wall. And as I said, they were 7 feet apart in width and sounded absolutely great. But again, Soundstage. I love what these do. And I didn't really find any setup positioning that hurt their Soundstage. They were throwing this beautiful wide Soundstage no matter what I did. It was good enough, but I love the Soundstage that these throw. This is the first. If Soundstage is high on your priority list for a speaker system, put these on your list. So how do they sound? Well, I've already can't stop talking about the Soundstage. My first impression was just, wow, I can't believe the width of the Soundstage that these are throwing. So these they're basically the same size as the LS50 Meta, but these stand mounts throw such a gorgeous and wide Soundstage. It wasn't so much, I didn't feel depth, but the width, and it stands out when I A/B listen between either of these. The Soundstage, really a positive upside surprise, because Soundstage is high on my list, and these just disappear so easily without messing around. So a couple of amps that I played them on. On the Win amp, these sound great. Win amp Class D, not a whole bunch of power. I think 60 watts per channel, but that's at 8 ohms. These are 6 ohms. There is no treble glare. Very smooth treble presentation. but there is not that Class A sweetness to the highs that I get on the Sonus Fob or Lumina 5s on a Class D, but very smooth treble presentation. Bass, the tonality of bass, even on Class D, grand pianos sound like a grand piano. Check, very important to me. Detail retrieval is excellent. And on singer-songwriters and acoustic guitar and acoustic jazz, wow, I love these speakers on those genres. And maybe it has something to do with that Soundstage, but I would choose to listen to these speakers if I wanted to listen to some acoustic jazz or singer-songwriter. And again, the Soundstage that these throw and the tonality of the guitar strings and saxophone is just outstanding. Very, very happy. Now, I have to point out that at 100 on the Winamp, at 100% volume, these maxed out at a sound pressure level of 88.2 decibels. So there was full control, zero distortion on the Winamp. So you can just crank it to 100, no distortion, but the peak I was able to get was 88.2 decibels. So everyone, your listening levels and what you like are different, but I want you to be aware of that. If that's not an issue for you, and for me it's not, the Winamp was an excellent pairing in terms of how they sound. So just keep in mind, if for the Winamp, that's where your SPL levels is going to top out. In terms of bass extension, as I mentioned, I can hear the 45 hertz test tone, and I could hear a rolled off 40 hertz test tone, even though the specs say 53 hertz. Now, moving to my reference Class D amp, the XTZ Edge, which has 300 watts per channel into 8 ohms, into 4 ohms, and 150 watts into 8 ohms. Again, these are 6 ohm speaker. I was just so impressed with how these sound on a Class D. Amazing soundstage. The tonality and the presentation of the treble and the bass and the mid-range was really no different on the XTZ Edge Class D versus the Winamp. Just a lot more headroom and SPL level that you could crank it up to if you wanted to. But I'm not a Class D person. I'll choose Class A all day, every day. But these sounded excellent on both the Winamp Class D and the XTZ Edge. No treble glare on Class D, no sibilance, and you're not getting that Class A sweetness to the highs, but it sounded great. Now, I want to tell you, I played these on my 7.6 watt per channel single-ended triode 300B tube amp from Rysong, the A50 MK3, for jazz, singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar. Loved this pairing. Just a great pairing. And again, the 300B, tube amp adds more soundstage to an already amazing soundstage. I just love that pair. Now, I don't think very many people are going to pair this $900 set of Q acoustic speakers with a 300B single-ended triode tube amp, but if you do, it sounds great. I kept listening much longer than I intended to because I was just having a blast listening to my acoustic jazz on the 300B tube amp with the 5020s. Just a great, great pairing. It adds more of that Class A tonality and tube sweetness and rich fullness to the bass and the mids and to that treble that just adds that sweetness. So I just loved it. Great, great pairing. So with the 300B tube amp, jazz is just top notch with these. Now, again, I'll caution you, at 100% on the SE single-ended triode 300B tube amp, at right about 91 dBs, it could go higher, but it started to lose bass control. It started to distort. Didn't clip, but at 91 and above, it didn't sound good. It was distorting. And I believe this is due to the damping factor that you get from a 300B tube amp. You know, you have to, single-ended triode 300B tube amps tend to have a damping factor in the 50 to 20 range. Now, EL84 tube amps tend to have a damping factor in the 10 to 50 range. And EL84 tube amps have damping factor 20 to 100. KT88 tube amps have a damping factor of 30 to 150. Class AB amps tend to have a damping factor in the 50 to 200 range, whereas Class D damping factor usually is 100 to 1,000 and above. And I'm quite sure that is what I was hearing when at 91 dB and above, it was just losing control of the bass, and it didn't sound good. But for me, up to 90 or 91 dB with the 300B tube amps, this was my favorite pairing. So if you listen to hip hop, reggaeton, EDM, dubstep regularly, none of those are in my listening library. So maybe Class D is what you will need for the Q Acoustic 5020. So let's see. On the Black Ice Audio FX10H, the EL84 tube amp, these already throw such a wide soundstage. I didn't really notice an improvement in the soundstage, and I usually do switching from Class D to the EL84 amp, and I think that just speaks to what a tremendous soundstage these throw anyway. The FX10H adds that Class A sweetness to the tonality of the bass and the mids and the treble that I love. But what I really preferred, the 5020s on my 300B tube amp. But the FX10H from Black Ice Audio has that sub out. And since I really think these are better with a subwoofer, I think that would be, you know, my ultimate pairing choice. In fact, I think I would pair the Q Acoustics 5020 with the Black Ice Audio FX10H EL84 tube amp with a SVS Micro 3000 sub, same price as this, $899, and the Wimamp Pro Plus with that AKM DAC chip. You're sitting pretty, and I'd be in my hi-fi happy place with a system that costs $2,800 and would sound fantastic. That would be my system pairing with these if it were in my living room. Again, just a note of caution on the SPL levels. You should really know what dB levels you listen at and where you need the SPLs to reach, because on the EL84 Black Ice Audio tube amp, about 93, 92 dBs. Didn't lose control of the bass, but just didn't sound good above 93 decibels. So these are listening volume levels way above what I listen to. I really stop at about 87, but I'm cranking it up to listen for distortion, clipping, loss of control. So that those of you that do listen at higher volume levels, I want you to be aware, because to me, I prefer Class A. I prefer what tubes in Class A adds to that richness, that fullness, that tonality. But it is going to typically limit you to in that 93 to 95 dB SPL level. So that's why I think it's super important that you know where you like to listen, and is it important to you to be able to crank it above that level. On these, if you want to go above 93 to 95 decibel levels, I really think I would keep it to a Class D amp with plenty of headroom. Before I get into specific comparisons with the LS50 Meta and the Elac Debut 3.0, allow me to just ask you for your support for this channel. If you enjoy my take on speakers, amps, DACs, streamers, headphones, and IEMs, then I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel by clicking down below in the description on the Patreon. On Patreon, there's a Telegram chat option as well as Zoom meeting get-togethers for patrons. So please click on the Patreon link in the description and take a look around. I also want to make you aware that most, but not all, of the links in the description are affiliate links, and those do not cost you anything when you buy something, but this channel does get a commission, which makes a big difference for the channel. And the affiliate links are really your no-cost way to show your support for the channel. But I'd also love to get to know you personally by your joining my Patreon. We could get to know you personally and know what your system is at home, what your Grail system looks like, and what piece of your signal chain you may be researching and considering upgrading. So also feel free to suggest in the comments what kind of videos you'd like to see more of. So thank you again for your support for this channel. Okay, comparisons. Elac Debut 3.0 and the KEF LS50 Meta. All of the listening with all three of these was done with the KEF KC62 subwoofer. So let's start with the Elac 3.0. First thing, the Soundstage on every amp that I tried, the 5020s is a wider and more impressive soundstage. It just, you immediately notice the soundstage when ABC switching. The Elacs have imaging and layering and instrument separation, which is way above their price point of $450. But it's also slightly better, in my opinion, than the Q Acoustic 5020s. But this is a niggle. It is slight. The detail retrieval on the 5020s is excellent. However, my take on the 5020s is they're good, but not as good as the KEFs on complex music with a lot going on, like I mentioned before, Juan Luis Guerra, or a specific song, Carlos Santana with Michelle Branch, The Game of Love. When they get into the chorus, about a minute in, there's a lot going on in the background, and I really listen for that instrument separation. Can I really hear individually? And all of these are excellent, but the KEFs are the best, then the Elac Debut 3.0, and then the Q Acoustic 5020. So on singer-songwriters, acoustic guitar, acoustic jazz, I think these 5020s are my favorite. So let's see. So if you're a buyer who currently has an excellent hi-fi system in your listening room or your living room, and you may be shopping for a smaller, less costly system for your office or your bedroom, I think you'll be very happy with either the Elac or the Q Acoustic 5020. As I keep saying again and again, the 5020s have more impressive soundstage. The Elacs have a little bit better instrument separation on complex, crowded tracks. Both very smooth treble presentation without any treble glare or any sibilance. Played on Class D amps, the Elac has bass and mids with just a beautiful tonality that is rich and full and almost as if being played on a Class A amp. And it has a fullness to it that I love about the Elac debut 3.0s. So in some ways, I think the Elacs are a little bit better of an all-rounder for any genre of music. But for acoustic jazz and singer-songwriters, I would prefer the Q Acoustic 5020s over the Elac. Now, specifically to the LS50 Meta as a comparison, the soundstage on the 5020s is still wider than on the LS50 Metas, which that's got to be impressive for a $900 speaker versus $1,600 KEF LS50 Meta. If soundstage is your thing, and it's high on my list, you are going to be so impressed with the 5020s. Bass and mids on the Metas is richer and fuller. So, quick coffee metaphor. In the bass and the mids, the 5020s are a medium brew coffee from a really good coffee roaster. The Elac debut 3.0 are a dark roast from the same coffee roaster. And the KEFs are an espresso roast with the strongest, richest flavor in the bass and in the mids. As a result of this, the 5020s, when A/B listening, seem a bit sparkly, but not bright, but not warm either. Clean and sparkly. The layering and instrument separation is better on the LS50 Metas, but the Metas have some of the best. So that is not anything you can hold against the 5020s. The 5020s, the instrument separation is excellent, but the KEFs are just super high level. And surprisingly, the Elac debut 3.0 stand out in their ability here in instrument layering and separation, which again, $450 speakers, the Elac debut 3.0 are an incredible value proposition. And I want to borrow the phrase from John Darko here. We are talking about an audiophile difference between these three when I am separating their ability to separate instruments and layer complex music that's crowded in the background. Really an audiophile difference. These are all, I would say hi-fi, high level. So the Metas are my choice between the three overall. The Elac 3.0 are the runaway winner in terms of value for money. $450. Remember, $450 per pair Elac 3.0. Q Acoustic 5020, $900. KEF LS50 Meta, $1,600. Elac, the fact that a $450 pair of speakers can be in this evaluation, value for money, that Elac debut 3.0 is incredible. If you have a high quality main hi-fi system, in my opinion, it can be frustrating and hard to put a smaller, less expensive system in a secondary room like a bedroom or an office, because it sucks when you hear the flaws of that system in comparison to your more pricey system. That's been my experience. I think you can put together a really nice sounding value system around these Elacs for a secondary room, and you will not be disappointed. The Q-Acoustic 5020s, when paired with a subwoofer like the SVS Micro 3000, which is the same price, $900 basically, would be my choice over the Elacs. With a sub, I can, in my music library, I could play the Elacs in a secondary room with a good amp without a subwoofer, and I'd be very happy. I want a subwoofer with the 5020s. But if I pair the 5020s with a cost appropriate SVS Micro 3000, which I've experienced with, and I love the app, and that you can set it up relatively easily and would be a perfect pairing, I think, with this. That would be my choice for a moderately priced living room listening system. I think the 5020s could not only go in a living room system for how they sound, but they're more stylish. And I think they have a sharp aesthetic, and they have looks to match their sound quality. So, second, the Soundstage is so high on my list of priorities in my hi-fi system, and the Q-Acoustic stand mounts deliver such a beautiful wide soundstage. I just love that about these. And you're probably sick of hearing me say soundstage, 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 but that's what just has stood out for me in this evaluation. And finally, as I mentioned previously, I would pair the 5020s with the SVS Micro 3000 sub, the Black Ice Audio FX10H EL84 tube amps, which has that sub out, with a Weem Pro Plus, so you get the AKM DAC. That system, you're $2,500, no, $2,800, right? 918. No, you're right about, $2,800. But $2,800, this system looks sharp and it sounds as good as it looks. I don't know if, some people just aren't willing to cross the Rubicon for tube amps, but the Black Ice Audio FX10H is small enough and simple. If you're a first timer to tube amps with a sub out, I'm telling you, that 5020 FX10H SVS Micro 3000 and the Weem Pro Plus, that's a full system that would sound amazing in a living room or a listening room. That would be a system I would be very, very happy with. But, you kind of know that I'm a Class A kind of a guy. So if you're Class D, plug that in instead, and you'll be very happy, and you can crank it above whatever you want to SPL levels. So that is my review of the Q-Acoustics 5020. Now I want to say thank you so much for watching. My goal is to help you reach and enjoy your hi-fi happy place. But what do you think about the Q-Acoustics 5020 stand mount speakers? Please share your thoughts in the comments down below, and most definitely please come back to this channel and watch again. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Cheers.